So okay, I'm here to explain sort of the dark side of exalted planets and how debilitated planets are not really so much that bad in your birth chart, because most people, or at least beginners, when it comes to learning astrology and learning their birth chart, they can find out that their planet is debilitated and think it's the worst thing in the world. And other people, they can feel as though they have an exalted planet and think it's the best thing in the world. But I'm just here to show you some of the ups and downs, to my best of ability, of planets that are exalted, some of the dark sides to them, and actually some of the benefits of the debilitated planets for the people who have the debilitated planets and think that they are just doomed, that it's just going to be the worst thing ever. So first, I'm going to start off by explaining some of the negative sides of, some of the exalted planets. Now I'm going to start with the sun. So the sun represents our soul. It just represents, is one of the things that's part of our personality. And it can represent our father. It can sort of represent our ego. Sun is like a king. It's like authority. It's like power. And that is short and simple what the sun is. So when sun is exalted in the sign of Aries, what happens is a person's ego, their sense of self, can be inflated. Their personality can become inflated. It just blows up. Because you see, Aries is ruled by Mars, and it rules the first house, which is the personality, which is how you project yourself. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So Aries is sort of like, the eldest sibling, in a sense. And yeah, it's sort of like the eldest sibling. I don't know. It's the firstborn. It just deals with the number one. It's a natural leader. It feels very selfish. It just feels all about me. It's all about survival and survival instincts and just putting itself first. So here you take those survival instincts and egotistical instincts of Aries and you put them with the sun, and just the qualities of the sun is just exploded. For the most part, when a planet is exalted, its traits, the planet just becomes intoxicated. It just becomes high. It becomes just the qualities of that planet just gets blown up. It just becomes real high, real drunk, real intoxicated. And too much of anything can be bad. So like I said, some of a exalted Aries, depending on the house placement that the Aries is in and what the sun is in, what planets it's sitting with, these people can just have a very strong ego, and it can just ruin their relationships and interactions with people. Like, for example, if sun went into the 7th house with an exalted Aries, then this could possibly show that your ego can damage your romantic relationships or your just business relationships. Your strong sense of self, your strong personality, your overwhelming characteristics and desire to want to be right and not think about what's best for another person or other people can ruin relationships and cause a lot of arguments and stuff. That's just one example of an exalted sun going into the 7th house of relationships. Now let's move on to another placement that's exalted. Moon in Taurus, exalted. You think this is a very good placement? It is a good placement. There's good and downsides to every planet and every placement, but I'm just sort of shining the light. I'm just giving a contrast, because I believe most people sort of just naturally just assume that, oh, my planet's exalted, that it's the best thing in the world. It's nothing to matter. Well, with a moon exalted, the moon represents our mother, represents our mind, represents our emotions. And it's exalted in Taurus because here in Taurus, the mind and the emotions become very stable. That's true. But also, depending on what's aspecting the moon and where house moon is in, there's also a dark side to the moon. Some of the things that you can see with someone who has their moon in Taurus, an exalted moon in Taurus, they become very overindulgent, very obsessive, very possessive, very sexually lustful. You know, very a glutton. Yeah, you know. I hope I said that word right. Glutton. You know, glutton for punishment, whatever. You know, they just be overindulgent. They can eat a lot of food. They can, you know, a lot of sexual partners. Just over possessiveness, over attachment, just an overindulgence of things can be seen with the mind. And when they don't have that thing that they strongly desire or attach themselves to, they can go crazy. Because Taurus comes from the second house of possessions. And the moon is like our mind and our emotions. So the mind, the moon, can feel real balanced and stable as long as it has its possessions that are valuable to it, or the things that it identifies itself with. There's many other reasons why the moon in Taurus can become very, you know, a dark side to it. But even though I'm more so of a Vedic astrologer, a Jyotish astrologer, I try to make my videos very universal so that the tropical viewer can read it, can look at these videos, and the other side can look at them. But if I was to go use those terminologies, I could really dissect and explain why an exalted Taurus moon has many more dark reasons and sides to it. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Just leave it real simple so everyone can understand. So let's move on to Mercury. Mercury is exalted in its own sign that it rules. Mercury represents our communication, our logical, practical thinking, our mathematical 1 + 1, 2 + 2 type of thinking, or filing our taxes, changing our tire, you know, type of thinking. Yeah, that's what Mercury represents, and it rules Gemini and it rules Virgo, and it's exalted in its own sign that it rules, which is Virgo. And I guess the negative side of the exalted Mercury in Virgo is that the overcriticalness. Yeah, these people can be very intelligent. They can be very sharp. But they can also sort of, you know, short and simple, just overthink things. Their mind can just, it's like leaving your computer on. You just frying your brain and stuff. But it's not really too much of a negative side of exalted Mercury, because Mercury is sitting in his own sign. And when you look at the house and sign that Mercury and Virgo rule, it's the 6th house, which is everyday struggles and conflicts and problems that we deal with on an everyday basis. And it takes a sharp, analytical, critical, and practical mind to deal with those everyday problems and obstacles that we deal with. So Virgo is overthinking and critical for good reasons when you look at the house that it belongs to. And that's probably only the main negative thing of an exalted Mercury. It's not really too bad, because this is just a sign that Mercury rules, you know. So moving on to our next next planet, Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So why would exalted Venus have any negative, you know, things attached to it? Well, Pisces is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter deals with expansion. It deals with, you know, I just said it, basic expansion. Unlike Saturn, it doesn't have rings and boundaries around it. So there's nothing to stop Jupiter from doing what it wants to do. So that energy comes into Venus, which represents your romantic encounters, the way you express love, the way you want to be treated romantically. What we would see with someone with a Venus in Pisces is that these people, you know, there's no boundaries on their love. So these people can either be very sexual and just have a lot of sex with a lot of people, because they can become intoxicated with the feelings and just the feelings of love and just merging with people. Or these people can become just share their love in a different way, in a non-sexual way. They just be very loving and nurturing and whatnot to people. But you can see both sides, very sexual or just very nurturing, catering, and loving to people. And these people can tend to get hurt a lot because, like I said, they don't have no guards around them emotionally, or they don't have no guards around them romantically, you know, so they might get hurt and let someone back in again and again. That is sort of basically, you know, the dark side of Venus and Pisces exalted. You know, they just don't have no protection for themselves, and they can just sort of get intoxicated with doing things that makes them feel good, because Venus is pleasure. Venus is luxury things like fine wine, fine liquor. So these people can get overindulgent in drugs. That makes them feel good and whatnot. So those are some of the things that you can see with an exalted Venus, dark side of them. An exalted Mars in Capricorn. You know, Mars represents fire and sex and brothers and boys and weapons. So it represents how we it represents how we take action and stuff. So what would happen when Mars goes into Capricorn? Well, when Mars goes into Capricorn, the reason that Mars is exalted in Capricorn is because Capricorn comes from Saturn. Saturn is all about discipline and routine and hard work and all that. So Capricorn takes on those traits and it puts it into Mars. Mars is like this energy. It's like this horsepower. It's just this hyped up soldier who's waiting to take an order. So what happens is Mars sort of uses his energy more wisely. He uses his energy and strength productively, you know, more practically and calculated wise. So what is the downside to this placement? In my opinion, it really isn't a huge downside to this exalted Mars. It's just that a person who just feels naturally, I don't know, naturally capable of doing things, or very athletic, or just capable of doing something, they can tend to feel down. They can become lethargic. They can possibly become just very lazy and complacent, and probably won't really work too hard or try too hard to maybe do something, because they just already know and feel real capable and confident that they can do it. So that's one possible thing that we see with a exalted Mars when it's in Capricorn. What else? The next planet, exalted Jupiter. I really don't see a negative side to exalted Jupiter. Jupiter in exalted, when it's exalted in Cancer, is better than when it's sitting in his own sign of Sagittarius, if you ask me. When Jupiter goes into Cancer, you know, well, I don't even know where to begin. Jupiter represents your teachers, gurus, our divine wisdom, our divine knowledge. You know, Jupiter, when we start talking about religion and politics and tarot and astrology, that's our Jupiter taking a hold of us. Talking about the universe and where did we come from, that's sort of our Jupiter, our divine knowledge activating and interpreting. And when Jupiter's sitting in his own sign of Sagittarius, you know, Jupiter's very optimistic. Jupiter has no rings, has no boundaries. So Jupiter doesn't know when to stop when it does something. So Jupiter, you know, they're sort of like a Jehovah's Witness. They just go around and spread their belief system and knowledge to people. And if they get the door shut in their face, they'll keep going. But one of the negative sides of Jupiter, let's say that this a Jupiter person in Sagittarius is arguing and trying to prove their point, trying to prove that their belief system, that their religion, that their way of thinking is better than your way of thinking. And they might ignorantly, you know, say things that might hurt and offend you, you know. They might, I'm just being real dramatic and just extreme, you know. That's like one race saying that their race is better than someone else. Or it's like a white person not being able to maybe relate and understand the struggles of a black person, and they just start saying, proving, they start, pulling up things to prove their argument without realizing or not caring that they're hurting and offending the other person. Jupiter is very optimistic, and that blissfulness and ignorance can be harmful. It's sort of like a dog. A dog can be very happy and playful, and they don't know when they're hurting you. They might not be aware that they just scratched and clawed you and you're hurting. They might not be aware that they just bit you real hard and they hurt you. So a dog, they're very playful and they forgive quickly, but they can also hurt you and not be aware of it. And Jupiter can sort of be the same way. They can hurt you and not be aware and know and realize that they hurt you. But when it goes into Cancer, the person becomes maybe more considerate and nurturing in how they express their views and belief system, and nurture and talk to someone and nurture that person with their wisdom and knowledge. That might be like, dag, I don't agree with this person say, but I want to prove my point without being nasty and without hurting them, and I want to prove it in a point that they would understand it and it wouldn't be taking it personal. There'd be a little bit more consideration with the exalted Jupiter. The Jupiter and Cancer person, if they were just a teacher, they'd probably just be way more patient and nurturing and all that stuff to their students. While the Sagittarius person, I don't know, I can't come up with another good example. But y'all basically get the gist of an exalted, y'all basically get the gist of what I'm saying of an exalted Jupiter and how it's sort of more positive. Now the last one would be Saturn. The exalted Saturn. I can't come up with a negative example for exalted Saturn either. When Saturn is exalted in Libra, I think it's sort of a good thing. Because Saturn is sort of, cold and very serious. But Saturn loves working and dealing with people. Because the Mochokun sign of Saturn, in other words, the secondary sign that Saturn rules is Aquarius, which is in the 11th house of large social network circles and organizations. So Saturn loves working and dealing with a lot of people. And Saturn is exalted in Libra, which rules the 7th house and deals with one-on-one intimate relationships with people. So Saturn doesn't like working alone. And with Libra being this Venusian sign, I feel as though it sort of softens Saturn's cold heart. It makes Saturn a little bit more friendly and lighter and approachable when it comes to, handling business and dealing and interacting with people, versus being very serious all the time or cold. Saturn sort of becomes more of a people person and more relatable and down to earth and just friendlier and lighter when it goes into Libra, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm here to explain what happens with these debilitated planets and why they are not so bad. I had to break this video up into 2 parts, so this is the second part. It's just explaining some of the benefits of the debilitated planets in our chart and why they're not really so bad. So I'm gonna start with Sun and Libra, because the debilitated planets, the signs of the debilitated planets is the opposite of what they're exalted in. So Sun is exalted in Aries, and therefore the opposite of Aries is Libra. So it's debilitated in Libra. And the reason that it becomes debilitated in Libra is basically because, the different traits in the characteristics and personality of these two things. The Sun, like I said, everything revolves around the Sun in our solar system. The Sun is the king. People work for the king. The king doesn't work for people. And Libra, it's all about relationships and being in relationships and dealing with people. It really comes from the 7th house, which is intimate one-on-one relationships and just dealing with people. And these two just clash. You can't have a strong, fiery ego and go into some business agreement and deal and relationship. That ego will ruin the relationship. The seventh house is known as the descendant. It's where the sun sets. It's where the sun dies. It's where the ego dies. So the ego cannot exist in a relationship. That's what we learn. But the benefit, in my opinion, of having a Libra sun, it just is, the person can tend to not be so egotistical. They can think about other people and things outside of themselves. And, maybe put the needs of other people ahead of their own. So that's a good quality of a debilitated sun, in my opinion. Of course, you just can't take everything I say as law and just face value, because you gotta look at someone's chart. But just in general, this is the essence of like a Libra sun. So the next one is the debilitated moon. Moon is exalted in Taurus. So the opposite of Taurus is Scorpio, which is where moon is debilitated in. And I gotta be honest, I couldn't and can't really think of too many strong good qualities of having a debilitated moon in Scorpio. Yes, you might tend to, your mind might tend to be more intuitive, but Scorpio is this very intense, extreme sign. And the moon is soft and motherly and nurturing, because it originally comes from the fourth house and originally rules the sign of Cancer, and moon represents the mother. So it wants to be gentle and nurture and nourish you. While Scorpio is ruled by Mars. And Mars is all about taking action and hurting, because Mars represents weapons and fire. And when moon goes into like Scorpio, the moon is the emotions in the mind, and now the mind is sitting in the sign whose ruling planet is Mars, which is a soldier and weapons. So what you can see with someone in like a Scorpio moon is that a person can tend to use, they can be manipulative, they can be emotionally manipulative. They can use your secrets and information and stuff that you confided in them and use that against you as a weapon in an argument. So basically, the weapon that the sign of Mars use when it goes into the moon is it uses, emotional warfare, mental warfare, And then, like I said, the moon is the mother, it wants to be nurturing. And Scorpio is secretive. Scorpio is secretive and protective and calculative and on guard. It makes sure no one is hitting it from behind, sneaking up on it. And moon, in essence, in nature, in its characteristics, it doesn't want to be like that. It doesn't want to have to be on guard. It doesn't want to have to be manipulative and uses its emotions and love against other people in a malicious way. So I honestly can't really think of too many good reasons for a debilitated moon. Like I said, of course, you could be very it's possible your mind can be very sexual, maybe even intuitive, very calculative, very dark, very mysterious. But characteristic wise, these two clash, and I can't really think of too many good reasons of a debilitated Scorpio moon. Now, of course, just because everybody got a Scorpio moon doesn't make them a bad person. If you're aware of your characteristics and traits, then you'll be able to keep yourself in check. And a whole bunch of other things in someone's birth chart can alter the intensity of these characteristics that I'm listing. So now we're going to talk about a debilitated Mercury, because Mercury is exalted in Virgo. The opposite of Virgo is Pisces. Pisces was originally ruled by Jupiter. And when Mercury goes into this sign, it throws Mercury off guard, because Mercury is all about the real world and logical, calculative, practical things like doing your taxes and how to change a tire and statistics and facts. It deals with reality. It deals with the problems of the real world. And Pisces, it wants to escape. It wants to leave this, materialistic world. It wants detachment. It wants moksha. Moksha means liberation. Virgo originally rules the sixth house, which is the everyday problems and everyday conflicts and problems of the world. And Pisces is in the 12th house, which is the house opposite of the sixth, which represents isolation, spirituality, and loss. And, just detachment and all that good stuff. So you see, now you got Mercury in the sign of this very, detached, mystical, spiritual sign. And Mercury represents our communication and our intelligence, our ability to solve the problems that I just mentioned as examples a little bit. So if you was to give this person, for example, the Mercury and Pisces person, a math test, and you wanted them to, finish this test, finish this SAT, and, this certain amount of time, this in 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever, they probably would fail or probably wouldn't do that good, because their intelligence doesn't come on the spot. The Mercury and Pisces person will almost behave like a Mercury in the 12th house person. They'll have to, their intellect, their knowledge would come through isolation, through meditation, through reflecting. Their intelligence to solve the practical problems of the real everyday world comes through their intuition, comes through a higher power. They got to just sit and think and daydream and think about, how would I go about solving this issue? How would I go about solving this problem? So their intelligence becomes way more intuitive. It won't become so quick. And, these people, they can probably, they can sort of forget probably what they're going to say. They might forget, I don't know. They might just become a little bit absent-minded. They might forget what they're going to say. It's just things are processing a little bit slower with Mercury. Mercury is getting the information a little bit slower because now he has to just daydream and think and all that stuff to get his answers and whatnot. It's almost like the information is like buffering. It's just that circle. It's just taking a while for the information to download. So it's not really a bad thing for Mercury to be in Pisces. It's just that the way that you go about getting the information and go about solving your problems will be different. And little things like this is what makes us unique. We all learn different. We have our own ways of learning things. A Mercury and Pisces person probably be a very visual, imaginative learner. The learning has to be interesting or made fun or whatever, I feel so I'm missing one more thing with this Mercury and Pisces. If I remember before I finish recording this video, then I'll jump back to it. But that's basically the essence of Mercury and Pisces. Oh, that's what I was about to say. Einstein had Mercury in Pisces in sidereal Vedic astrology, which is why I'm really the type of astrologer that I am. He has his Mercury in Pisces. And he was someone who was very intelligent. So you can still be a smart person if you get your Mercury debilitated in Pisces. It's just that the way that you go about, learning and obtaining your information might be a little bit unorthodox. It might not be great for, a formative education, like going to school. The way that you learn might not fit these curriculums, but you're smart in your own unique way. So now I'm moving on to Venus. Venus in Virgo. Because Venus is exalted in Pisces, so the opposite of Pisces is Virgo. The reason that Venus is debilitated in Virgo is because, Venus is all about pleasure and money and love and relationships and all that good stuff. Virgo is originally ruled by Mercury, who is that logical, practical intelligence and thinking. And, what good is romance if you're always so logical about it, if you're always thinking about it, you're always calculating things. Sometimes a woman or a man or whatever, they know that they're messing with someone that they shouldn't mess with. They see all the red flags, but they don't care. They're like, you know what? We'll deal with those red flags and those problems as we get when we get there. I don't care. I love this person. I want to have sex with this person. I'm enjoying the present. And then when they get heartbroken, you know, they be like they just be a mess. And that friend that was telling them that, hey, I told you shouldn't do this. You know, they'll hate that friend. Like, so you always so negative. You never uplift me. You know, that person ain't negative. They just a realist. And that is what, you know, the Virgo Venus is. A Virgo and Venus person, they might be realistic about their outlook on love. And a Virgo Venus person, they can be very thoughtful and nurturing and catering to their partner. You see, the upside of it is that there's a bit of intelligence that comes into the way that one expresses their love. Y'all probably heard and seen these examples a million times. Some of Virgo in Venus, or Venus Virgo, whatever, they'll be just be, oh, this person likes this. Well, I'll make sure I'll get them this. Oh, this person said they like this, or they like doing these things. I'll make sure to remember it when it comes to their birthday. So this person, they might be a little bit more thoughtful when it comes to, you know, remembering the way that someone needs to be nurtured and taken care of. There's a bit of a cold intelligence. That's what I'll say. There's a bit of a cold intelligence that probably comes in when someone has their Virgo, their Venus in Virgo. You know, they might not be the most romantic, but you're like, wow, this person, they remembered to do this. Wow, this person, they remembered to get me this thing. You always remember how thoughtful and stuff the person is, you know. But Venus represents the type of people that you would attract in relationships. So the Venus and Virgo person would attract these people who are, they might be a little bit cold romantically. They might be very logical romantically. Might be a little bit robotic and stiff romantically. But they'd be very thoughtful and catering, you know. You'd be like, wow, he did remember to wash the dishes and take out the trash. Or, wow, he did remember that I like flowers and teddy bears and stuff. It'll be those little things that probably keep the relationship going and alive. But ultimately, you know, Venus doesn't want to be all calculative and thinking in Virgo. It just wants to express and all that stuff. But ultimately, no, Venus and Virgo isn't that bad, like I said. So now we're going to do Mars. Mars, when it goes into the sign of Cancer. Because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So therefore it becomes debilitated in Cancer. And the debilitated Cancer, the debilitated Mars isn't even that bad. Because NBA player Michael Jordan, he's a #1 prime example that damn near most Vedic astrologers know about. He has his Mars in Cancer. But he was a great athlete. You see, when a planet is debilitated, that planet, it just has to work harder to catch up with everyone else. Like, you know, they just have to work harder. Versus if that planet was in his own sign, versus if that planet was exalted. When the planet is like in its own sign, and when the planet is exalted, these are people, they just know they're the shit. They feel real comfortable. They feel at home, so they can just relax. You know, they just feel like, oh, like a planet that's exalted. It's like a planet. It's like you going to a vacation. It's like you sitting in a hotel room or Airbnb. It's exciting to be in this nice luxury place. You're away from home. You don't got to deal with no rules. You just have fun and just let out. And roommate in your room service, they'll clean up the room and stuff. But after a while, you're gonna get sort of tired of that. And you're going to want to go home. You're going to want to go back home to, you know, your own place and stuff. And yeah, you're going to want to go back home to your own environment. And yeah, you're going to miss home. You're going to be homesick if you're just in this environment all the time. Now, if a planet's in its own sign, it's gonna be like you sitting at home. It's gonna be all cool and stuff. You're gonna feel comfortable in your own environment, you know. But if you're sitting somewhere, if you're a guest at someone else's home, you staying at your friend's house or a family member who you're not that familiar with, you're going to behave and be on your best behavior and not mess up. So you're going to work harder and perform better and just work harder to make sure everything goes smooth, calm, and just goes smoothly, you know, if your planet is in a sign that it's debilitated. So that is something that's one way you can just rank these things. The debilitated planets, they just got to work harder, and the planets that are exalted, they can just feel too comfortable. And the planets that are in their own sign, I had to break this video up into another goddamn part because the battery was running low, and this is going to be a pain in the ass to edit and put them all together and crap. So I left it off talking about Mars. Basically, Mars debilitated in Cancer is not really a bad thing. Mars in Cancer is probably sort of going to be real aggressive and real tough and not really soft and emotional like you think. Because you see, Cancer is a sign that is ruled by the moon. Moon represents our mind and our emotions, the way that we think and the way that we react, especially in Vedic sidereal astrology. The moon is very important. And the moon stays in the sign for 2.5 days, so it's always constantly moving, constantly fluctuating, and the moon has many different phases. It's waning and waxing and new moon and full moon, so it's always going through all these turbulent changes. And now that's attached to your, you know, your aggression, the way you take action. Mars is guns and weapons and knives and swords and stuff, so now you giving this unstable soldier this schizophrenic and fast-paced moving, constantly fluctuating mind. So someone here, you know, it's just someone here, you know, they can just really just act out on their emotions really quickly, you know. Their emotions really can rule their body, rule the way that they take action and do things. Another thing that you could probably see with Mars and Cancer is that it could probably almost sort of behave like a Mars in the 4th house, you know, because Cancer is motherly and nurturing because it comes from the moon and is attached to the 4th house. So someone with Mars in Cancer, these people can probably just be very protective and aggressive and offensive and fight for their family and fight for their possessions and items and just the people that they love and hold near and dear and close to them. Those are the things that a Mars person in Cancer can really fight for. You know, Mars is also, like I said, weapons and knives, and Cancer is attached to the moon and very motherly and nurturing. So maybe someone with Mars and Cancer could possibly be someone who's a great cook, or they can direct that anger, that Mars energy, into more motherly and nurturing professions like being a caterer or something. You know, they can direct their energy instead of cutting, you know, to catering and taking care of and nurturing people and healing people. Or like I said, you know, they can be on the other side of the spectrum and let their emotions rule them, and they can just be very reactive to everything, wanting to fight and punch and have tantrums over the slightest, tiniest little things. Yeah, basically when the planets debilitate, they just gotta work harder. Like I said, Mars and Capricorn is exalted. It feels very strong. It feels very confident in its ability to get job done. But, you know, a debilitated planet might have some insecurities, might have some obstacles, might have some struggles in front of them. So they have to work harder and perform harder and better to, you know, outshine other people. It's like an example that I used. You know, it's almost like playing a video game. And, it's like playing a video game. You got like 99 lives. So you're not really worried about giving forth your best effort in losing and dying, because you know that you'll always, you know, come right back. But if you play in a video game and you just got 1 or 2 lives left, you know, you're going to be focused. You're going to work harder to make sure that you don't fail, to make sure that you don't lose, and you're going to sharpen your skills to be better. You know, that's sort of like how a debilitated planet will operate. So now we're going to move on to the next debilitated planet, Jupiter. When Jupiter is debilitated, it goes into Capricorn because it's exalted in Cancer, and the opposite of Cancer is Capricorn. So that is Jupiter's debilitation. Basically, you know, the reason that Jupiter sort of debilitated in Capricorn, one of the many reasons why it's debilitated Capricorn is because, you know, Jupiter's this real spiritual, guru, divine, like, planet and stuff. And when Jupiter goes into Capricorn, Capricorn is attached to Saturn. Capricorn rules the 10th house. And, you know, that represents career and status and jobs and all that stuff. So, you know, when Jupiter and Capricorn come together, the type of teachings and guru that Jupiter becomes mostly like some business, financial teacher, some business guru, some financial marketing guru and stuff. And that's not really the essence of what Jupiter represents. So that is why it's debilitated. It's not a bad thing to have your Jupiter in Capricorn. You can just be someone who is very intelligent and very wise when it comes to giving advice, on marketing and business and things. You become more intellectual when it comes to things dealing with the real world, the practical world, the realistic, logical world. You could be just become a guru of earthly things that I can't really think of examples, but I believe you get the gist and understanding of that. Someone with Jupiter and Capricorn, they can also become a great spiritualist, whatever, because you see Capricorn is Earth sign, and these people might this now apply to all of them. They might become slower to maybe believe in spirituality and tarot and astrology and all that good stuff, but once they learn it, they will be able to explain it in a way that other people who's probably like them, who didn't understand it and believe it, they'll be able to explain it in a way that they can understand it. Because Capricorn is the earth sign, makes it, and it's very practical and logical. So it will make the esoteric and the spiritual things very practical and logical and digestible for the average person to understand it. So these people, they would, like I said, they'll be able to break it down and spit it out in a way that people understand it, versus someone who's like real spiritual, someone who's real tapped in, someone who's real esoteric. They just get the rambling, getting the preaching and using all these deep metaphors, and you don't understand a word that they're saying. But that person who didn't really believe it and was against all this stuff, they'll be able to explain it and say it to you in a way that you didn't understand. Like, you just ask some real spiritual person or whatever, or some real hardcore Christian, what is the purpose of life? And if God is real, if Jesus is real or whatever, then why did he let so many tragedies happen? And they wouldn't probably give you no real good answer. They probably, well, you just have to find out, when you die. Or they'll come up with some parables and riddles and all this crap. So, that Capricorn person, that Jupiter Earth sign person, they might be able to, break it down and give you a real logical explanation for why things are the way that they are. But Jupiter and Capricorn, Jupiter debilitated, can still give some maybe slight negative results, because usually when Jupiter aspects a planet or a house and in your birth chart, it sort of blesses and heals that house and blesses and heals that planet, especially if that planet or house has a whole bunch of malefic or negative things going on. It sort of becomes that silver lining that saves the essences of that planet or that house. And it's like when Jupiter looks at a house and looks at a planet and is in good dignity, meaning that it's exalted or in its own sign or a friendly sign, it's almost like this divine guru, this sage or this priest or this pastor, this divine being who is like blessing you and praying for you and giving their blessings and stuff to heal you and protect you. But when Jupiter's in Capricorn, it's almost like you're going to like I said, you're going to some financial analyst, some Wall Street guru, and you're asking him for advice on your marriage, or you're asking him to save your sick kid, or going to some stockbroker for some from some exorcist, some exorcism or whatever. How well do you think that person will be able to do that thing, So those type of qualities of Jupiter, they sort of become damaged and weakened when it's debilitated in Capricorn. But overall, it's not really a bad thing. Jupiter, to sort of obtain those blessings of Jupiter, a Jupiter and Capricorn person, they'll just have to sort of just work harder towards those things than probably an average Jupiter person whose planet is in his own sign or friendly. But that's always good and bad and good and everything. So the last planet is Saturn. Saturn is debilitated in Aries and exalted in Libra. So a debilitated Saturn, the reason that Saturn is debilitated in Aries is because Saturn likes working with people. It likes doing things with other people. It doesn't like being on its own. Saturn is a servant. It wants to serve other people. It wants to work for other people. It likes to work with people. That's why it's exalted in Libra, which is the house of which belongs to the 7th house of relationships, and that's why it rules Aquarius, which is the 11th house of large social network circles and gains. When it goes into Aries, Saturn, or the person who has this, depending on what house is in and stuff, they'll have to, they can tend to want to work on their own versus want to probably work with others. And they can probably be very impatient because, you know, Aries got that Mars energy and wants to do things fast and instant, and Saturn wants to take its time and wants to go slow and wants to do things properly. So there's like this internal tug of war when Saturn goes into Aries. There's like a delay because Aries wants to go this way and Saturn wants to go this way and does it slow. And Saturn wants to work with other people, but Aries, they might not want to really work with other people or think about other people. They just want to do their own thing. So there's like this staleness, this stalemate, this stalling due to these two opposing ideologies and ideas. But one of the upside, and that can also cause, like, you know, a delay, because Saturn likes to put delay and order and structure into the houses and signs that they go into, and the delay sort of gets increased when it goes into Aries because it's increased internal conflict. But the beauty of this is that when a person, you know, their Saturn return, or especially if their Saturn's like retrograded or something, you know, these people just got to learn to use that energy of Aries, use that Mars energy in a productive manner when it goes into Saturn. Someone with like Aries and Saturn, they probably have to work twice as hard because just for either whatever reason or just maybe just mentally, these people, they just don't want to really reach out for help or maybe network and work with people. Now, this doesn't apply to all of them. These things can change, but this is just my way of interpreting it in a way that y'all will understand, you know? So, like I said, someone with Aries and Saturn, they tend to not want to really work for too many people, and that can cause a delay. But these people got to learn to sort of, one, use their energy and direct it to the right places, to the right resources. Utilize their energy and time properly, because Aries is like that energy, and Mars and Saturn is that time, is that direction. So, you know, Saturn is like the steering wheel, and Aries is like that engine. You know, utilize and guide that energy in the right places. Saturn and Aries can sort of be like someone who is driving this nice fast ass car, but they don't know where they're going. They don't want to use no GPS. They don't want to use no map. They don't want to stop and ask for directions. They just drive. They know where they want to go. They know the destination that they want to get to, but they're lost, and they can have too much pride or whatever to want to go ask for help. They want to just do it on their own. So then it takes them longer to get to their destination. And along this journey, they sort of learn things. They sort of mature and grow. They learn and mature through their journey of being lost on this path that they want to get to. And yeah, that's just the thing. These people just need to ask and reach out for help. That way they can utilize that energy better in a more proper way. But that's basically it. That's all the planets. I don't talk about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because I'm like a sidereal Vedic Jyotish astrologer, or at least I'm learning to be. And they don't really utilize Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So I hope this video that I'm going to have to edit and put all together gave you great insight and clarity on exalted planets and debilitated planets, and why having a debilitated planet in your chart isn't the end of the world. And thank you for watching this video.